Welcome to MojoTalks, and this is WatchClub, the show where we break down the biggest shows on TV. I'm your host, Matt, and Phoebe has made her return this week. Phoebe, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to be breaking down Westworld Season 2, Episode 5, Akane no Mai, which was written by Dan Sietz and directed by Craig Zobel.
Amazing episode.
It was really
Great
good.
episode.
I honestly think this episode and last week's episode have been by far the best of the season. Maybe even the series. I don't know, but they were both really great.
Agreed.
So let's talk about our favorite moments. What were some of yours?
There were so many great moments in this episode. I think where we started off with Maeve and the crew meeting the samurais, that was pretty sick.
Yes.
And I liked in particular when they met their doppelgangers and they sort of realized that these people are in very, very similar, if not exactly the same narratives.
Yeah.
So when Maeve and Akane had this connection because they both had the motherly instinct, if you will. That was really, really cool. I also really liked when Armistice and the character with the dragon face tattoo.
Yeah, the Japanese Armistice character anyways.
When she said to her, even a snake can be a dragon, and she set her free, that was so sick and so badass.
Yeah. I thought that whole scene was really cool too. Not just scene, but that storyline.
Yeah.
I was actually really bummed every time they went back to Dolores and Teddy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I was just so enthralled by the whole Shogun World thing. And to that point, I really loved how all those scenes were kind of like an homage, or at least, very similar, almost shot for shot as the series premiere.
Yes.
Being introduced to all these characters, the way they kill certain people, it's just like very similar in shots. So I thought that was very cool. One of my favorite moments. Also, one I think we both can agree on was Maeve finding her new voice.
Whoa. That was crazy.
That was mind-blowing, right?
It was crazy.
I think I'm finding a new voice.
We probably should have expected something that crazy to happen, but like mind control,
I feel like
it wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't on my radar either, and I'm very interested to see like what the purpose of this storyline is. Like, I feel like it sort of came out of nowhere, and Maeve is just like such a strong character. It just serves to strengthen her character even more. Like, where will it bring her? I'm very interested to see.
I have a theory about that later, but obviously we touch upon theories later in the episode. But she's basically become like the most powerful person on the show.
Yeah.
By far, it seems.
I feel like there's such a, in this episode in particular, where we sort of weave between the Shogun World and the Westworld narratives, we see this connection, but also this sort of disconnect between Dolores and Maeve, and how their characters are sort of going in two completely different directions, with Maeve coming to more of a human sensibility versus Dolores sort of, like we were talking about this earlier, she seems more like a bot or like a host now than she ever did before.
Yeah.
It seems like she's really like only on one path, and she doesn't really understand like the consequences of her actions, or she doesn't really have any like purpose to it,
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see the dichotomy of their characters. And speaking of Dolores, my least favorite part of the episode, like you alluded to before, was any part where Dolores and Teddy were sort of at the forefront. I really, really am having trouble sort of grasping onto their storyline. I feel like there's nothing left for me to hold on to.
Yeah.
Dolores is sort of just like doing anything that she feels like doing, and it doesn't really make sense to me anymore. At first I thought she was like this, badass rebel, and now it seems like she's more of a rebel without a cause.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
you
agree.
feel the same way.
No, I feel the exact same way. And like I mentioned before, Shogun World was just so cool. We're meeting these new characters.
Yeah.
We're seeing how similar their storylines are. Well, I mean, they're similar because Lee's a lazy writer and he plagiarized Westworld.
Will you try writing 300 stories in 3 weeks?
But I was just so enthralled by that world, and every time they went back to like you said, the exact same static kind of lines, the same kind of attitude, it wasn't doing anything for me, so.
It's crazy how like the subplot can become more interesting than the main storyline.
Yeah.
And I feel like Maeve and Akane's connection is sort of what a lot of viewers were craving when Dolores and Maeve finally crossed paths after the revolution, essentially. And I know a lot of our commenters echoed my sentiments last time when I talked about, I wish that they had that bad girl connection, And I think that what I want is for Akane and Maeve to have that connection, because I think that they're so similar. They have such similar sensibilities, and just the way that they look at each other, they have this crazy connection. I think that that is the bad girl connection of this season.
それは願ってもないこと。
So there are always moments that we think the audience probably missed because the show is very fast and confusing. What are some of the things you think the audience might have not caught on to right away?
I feel like in this episode there were a lot of like subtle homages, and I think a lot of them were to like Japanese culture, but also to older episodes of the series. There was one in particular that I don't know if you noticed. I certainly noticed only after.
Okay.
It had to do with the kabutos, which is the Japanese hats that they were wearing, which are actually helmets.
Okay.
And sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but they were black and white. So we know that in the first season of Westworld, when the guests are coming to the park, they have the option of choosing a white or black hat.
Yeah.
So I think that that was sort of like a subtle little homage to the first season and to that sort of choice. And I think it also has to do, black and white is the dichotomy between good and evil.
Yeah.
And maybe these characters are a little bit of both, as opposed to being like strictly bad or strictly good, which seems to be the case in Westworld a lot.
Right.
So that could be an interesting
okay.
little thing you miss.
I hate to admit it, but I did miss that.
There you go.
You can't miss the hats, but the color kind of
Exactly,
thing. Totally missed that. One of the things I noticed, season 1, it's basically Dolores' storyline where she's at the cart, she's just finished doing her grocery shopping, and she drops the can of milk, and she's like all damsel in distress. Oh, I can't pick that up myself. And it's always usually like Teddy who comes up and picks it up for him if it's not the man in black.
Oh, yeah.
But it's important to note that usually it's Teddy, for this instance anyways. And that whole scene before the tragic resetting of Teddy's internal properties and all that stuff. Dolores walks Teddy into this bar or house or whatever, I'm not sure what it was, but there's a can of milk on the ground, or I think it's on the table, but anyways, she picks it up and she like holds on to it herself. So it's interesting that it doesn't fall and that Teddy doesn't pick it up, because it's always him that usually does it. So it was kind of like foreshadowing that, oh, she's completely taking charge of all of this, and that, something bad is potentially going to happen to Teddy, which it did, unfortunately. Yeah.
But where we're about to go, it's no place for a man like you. I'm so sorry.
You sure you want this? The change is this extreme. Without a full reset, I can't guarantee that he'll hold together.
To grow, we all need to suffer.
I feel like we've lost all of Dolores at this point, and we're only sort of seeing the Wyatt in her.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I agree. And it touches upon what you were talking about before, It's like, yeah, she's like omnipresent now. She knows, or at least she thinks she knows what she's doing, and she has complete control over herself. But it just seems like she's so one note, one dimensional, and she's only like has eyes for her plan, which is very Wyatt-like in essence. So yeah, I would agree. Also, it might just be me connecting these little dots that may not be there, but I thought there was like a little bit of like hair foreshadowing. It was interesting.
Yes.
Maeve, right before Akane kind of does the dance for the Shogun, and unfortunately her little daughter figure dies. It was very sad, but also she kills her she kills him, I should say, by taking like the knife out of her hair and cutting his head completely in half, which was
so
super
sick.
gruesome.
So
Actually,
sick.
maybe might have been one of my favorite moments.
Me
Very
too.
dark, but anyways, obviously she hid the knife in her hair, and before that, Maeve is talking to her. She's trying to make her like conscious of like the bigger picture kind of thing. And as she's doing this, she's just like grabbing her long kind of braided hair and stroking it and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why so much attention being paid to the hair here? And maybe that's it. That could be it, I think.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. Yeah, I know at the end of the episode, I completely missed this and only saw it making the rounds on the internet later. So for those of you who still haven't heard of it, Akane's dance was actually set to the song "Cream" by Wu-Tang, which was sort of in like a Shaolin kung fu style. And I think it's actually the original is by the Charmels, "As Long as I've Got You," which was sampled by Wu-Tang. I think it's really cool because Wu-Tang, has that sort of influence in their music.
Yes.
So it was really cool to see it in that setting and in that style. I think it suited the premise.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yep. think this episode gave us a lot to look forward to in the rest of the series, in particular when it came to introducing all of the characters in Shogun World.
Okay.
I think what's really, really interesting is, as we mentioned before, there are a lot of parallel sort of narratives going on. There are a lot of almost exactly the same characters. So we saw Maeve has Akane as her equal. Armistice has the dragon tattoo woman.
Yeah.
Does Dolores have a Shogun World parallel?
Oh.
And is she as irritating?
Is she as irritating?
Because Dolores is very irritating. No, I think that would be really interesting to see, because I know that the revolution is also happening in Shogun World. There's, the narratives are all messed up, and we saw Lee saying, oh, she wasn't supposed to do that when she kills the big bad who comes in to take her daughter figure at the beginning of the episode.
これが私の稲でございます。
That's not supposed to happen.
I wonder if there's something similar going on with a character who has the same sensibilities as Dolores. That could be very interesting. Yeah.
Do you think that she's maybe leading some sort of revolt within Shogun World as well, or is it too up in the air at this
I think
point?
it's probably too up in the air, but it would be really interesting to sort of see that narrative play out from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Someone with maybe different experiences.
Totally, yeah.
And maybe, a better grasp on what exactly they're fighting for.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Dolores has sort of lost that in
Yeah,
her quest.
totally.
So it could be interesting.
Maybe a bit more range in her emotion and drive, perhaps. We'll
perhaps.
see. Yeah. Some of my predictions actually include Dolores as well.
Oh.
So there was the really big scene before, unfortunately, she reset Teddy. Poor old Teddy.
Poor Teddy.
Poor romantic Teddy.
Love Teddy.
Anyways, there's the scene when they're having that conversation, and he's like, oh, we should just, you're telling me there's not one spot out there in the world where we can just give up and live our lives together? And clearly she's not happy with that answer. So she's just like, did I ever tell you the story about the cows and my dad? And basically the gist of the story is like, some of the cows have this disease. And she was like, so what would you do with these diseased cows? Because it's just bringing in a bunch of diseased flies who keep infecting them, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, well, I'd take the sick cows and I'd shelter them and I'd wait for them to get better until the flies left, And it's like, that's classic Teddy answer.
He's so sweet. He's so sweet.
So sweet. But then Dolores was like, You know what Daddy did? Daddy took all the sick ones, burned them, like maybe not alive, but killed them, burned them, and it created such a bad smelling smoke that it just kept all the flies away because flies don't like smoke.
Yeah.
And I think that this was basically her foreshadowing the fact that it's kind of like a parallel to all those bodies that were in the water,
Yeah.
right? So I think that it's a parallel. It's like those people in the water are the cows.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think that Dolores, I should mention, at the beginning of the episode, they're like, oh, all these hosts, 1/3 of the hosts have no memory whatsoever. It seems like they didn't have any at all. So one of my predictions is that Dolores has found a way to completely wipe all the hosts, similar to what she's done with Teddy, right? And just dump them all in the water there. So Delos finds this body of people in the water, and they're like, oh, what is this? This is a huge undertaking. We have to take care of this. So obviously they have to grab all the bodies from the water. So it's kind of like a red herring, kind of like distraction tactic for Dolores to continue on her quest, because it kind of ties into the whole, oh, not everyone deserves to make it to the Great Valley Beyond, right?
That's a good
And if
point.
she wipes all of those memories, then the Delos people can't look at their memories, can't look at their data and see what exactly she's up to.
Okay.
So I think that's one. Or now stay with me here.
Okay.
Maeve, we know that she has this mind reading ability now. So maybe she just, and I should mention, I think there's going to be a big clash. I don't know if you agree with me, but Maeve and Dolores, they eventually have to have this war type
Definitely,
thing. There's definitely a
definitely.
battle coming, and I think since Maeve has learned this mind control thing, that maybe she just straight up controls all of Dolores' army and has them
Ooh.
drown themselves.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I am so anxious to see, the outcome of that water scene where all
Yeah.
of the hosts are in the water. I feel like that's going to be the big reveal. And
Yeah.
I'm so anxious to see, but that sounds like it could be real.
I mean, I'm hoping so, because then I can brag about it.
Well,
But you
there
never
you
know
go.
in Westworld, you know? But it definitely seems like this is the big reveal of the
Yeah.
whole show. It kind of seems like maybe this is the furthest along in the timeline we're going to be introduced to. So it's going to
Anxious
be a big
see
one.
how we get there.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for watching. We do this every Monday for Westworld, and if you like TV or movies, definitely subscribe to MojoTalks for more. And of course, Phoebe and I are on another little show called The Cinephiles Extended Cut, which airs on this very channel every Friday. So for myself and Phoebe, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.